Hello and welcome to another update on the devlog of Runes of Areal. So what I've been up to lately is I've mainly implemented 2 extra cards, being the greedy card and the Thorns card. So the greedy card, let's look at that one. You deal 20 damage, and if an enemy dies, you obtain 100 gold. So that's the deal. In order to do that, I've added some things. So here in the effects function, play effects, I've added another effect called coins, and for that we create a coins particle effect at the X and Y coordinate of the enemy that's supposedly being dying, and we set the angle towards the text coins in the HUD, and then we move towards it. So very simple effect that I've added. And then let's go to the enemies family. And in the enemies family, you see I've added coins at death, which is just a simple instance variable in which we'll store the number of coins that the player is going to get whenever this enemy dies. So we can't immediately give him those coins, of course, because possibly that enemy doesn't die. So that's why we set this variable. And then we've got a command function, use card. And use card, we've got an extra logic called a death, which is the special function of that card. And we set the coins at death instance variable of that family to the special value of that card, which is 100 in that case. We play some effect, brightness effect, and we play the card sound effect. And basically after that, what we can do is at the enemy death function here, what we do is we check if that variable is greater than 0, and then in that case we add the coins. We play that coins effect I've just explained, and then we play the sound for loot collect. So basically, let's see what that looks like. I've added settings here for the greedy card, especially.
Fight.
We take this card, and then we go. I deliberately took only 1 health for those enemies, so they die immediately here, and I immediately get that 100 coins. So the second card I'm going to explain here, which I added, is this Thorns card. See what it does. When attacked, deal 3 damage to the attacker. So what I've done here in the battle logic, in the player states icon, I've added another icon for the Thorns. Like that. And basically, when we go look at the variables, we've got here the player state Thorns, another state variable which we can set that will influence the Thorns state of the player. And then we have the hero states, of course, the function that sets these state variables in the HUD. So if this set hero state function gets past the state of Thorns, we set the animation frame here to that state Thorns, and we make it visible. And of course, we set the value into the player state text. So this is done here in the refreshed states, and we check the variable. If the player state Thorns larger than 0, then we set those Thorns, of course. So this is one of those functions where one is being subtracted in next turn. So we should see that here in the function next turn. In effect here, when the player state Thorns is larger than 1, and we're not in the first turn, then we subtract 1. Here. So that's the way it works. So in order to do that, I had to do some refactoring, because we've got these functions, these command functions, and there's a command function to cast card damage. Cast card damage, which should be somewhere around here. Let's see. Here we have. So in former versions of the game, all of the damaging logic was in this guard damage logic. So that means that we'll subtract the damage from the enemy and check if the enemy is supposed to die, and if he's supposed to die, then then cue the commands for the death, etc., etc. The same thing happened here at cast scroll damage, which should be here somewhere. Cast scroll damage. Here we have it. And what I've done is this entire logic to check if the enemy has to die and stuff like that, and how much damage exactly has to be done, also needs to be done whenever the thorns are applied. So when an enemy attacks, it's actually not the player's turn. And if the thorns are active, it needs to attack the enemy back immediately. So at that time, not a single command is being issued to the command queue, and we can't play that. So what I've done is I've refactored the code a bit to encompass all the enemy applied damage, all the damage applying stuff into a function, and I've called it enemy applied damage. And if I go to the function, well, here it is in the enemy's event sheet. We pick the enemy we get passed through. We initialize a local variable called var damage to the bar damage we get passed along. This bar damage parameter will be set to the initial damage being passed away by the guard or by the scroll value. And what we then do is we change the damage bit depending on the attack skill and the player state damage multiplier. Then if it's feeble, we divide by 2. If it's fragile, we multiply by the fragile multiplier and stuff like that. And then we check if the shield is larger than 0, then we subtract the damage from the shield to deplete the shield, of course. And then we set the health, and then we need to check if the health equals 0, then we need to queue the command, of course, for death and for the checking of the victory. So this command here, this function, enemy apply damage, is now called in take damage as well. So take damage is a function that's called whenever the player takes damage. Whenever that's done, we also need to check for a lot of things here for the player, but if the player Thorns is set to value larger than 0, really, then we also call this enemy applied damage for the enemy, which is being done here, the enemy which is attacking, and we take a parameter here, bar from enemy, which is actually the UID of the enemy applying that damage. We of course pick that enemy, and here we pass that UID back to the enemy applied damage, and with the damage, of course, is the Thorns, player state Thorns. This, so that means if the player state Thorns is 3, at that moment we will cast 3 damage. If it's 2, it will cast 2 damage, etc. So that's for Thorns, how Thorns really works. I've also adjusted the sandbox, of course. Here we have now the possibility to add Thorns at the player start to go and check how Thorns really work. And I've also got a setting configuration here in the sandbox for Thorns, and just to show you how that works exactly.
Fight.
And alright, let me restart. Press the R key on the keyboard.
Fight.
Why don't I get any Thorns? Okay, I've got 5 Thorns from the start, of course, yeah. I didn't get any Thorn card. So I did 5 Thorns back, but this one probably has a level 1 attack, so it deals more damage. See, the Thorns work pretty well. Like that. So that's for this Thorns card, basically. Of course, what I didn't show you yet is a very obvious one, I think. Command functions and the use card function. Use card. and I believe here the cost special cards function equals Thorn. Then we set these Thorns, of course, and refresh the hero states. So this is this special cost function Thorns with special card value 3, which we add to this variable. So this is basically it. So I don't know if you've noticed, but another thing that's new to the game is, sorry about that, that's not what I wanted, this is what I wanted, is a new voiceover actually. I've added a new voiceover. Let me see here, let's do that. If you pay close attention.
Fight.
The fight here is something else. We'll pass our turn.
Enemy turn. Victory is yours.
So here we see we can hear the new voice. Actually, the new voice is Greg from Fiverr, which did that. Shout out to Greg. A really cool voiceover, which I've added to the game, replacing the automated, let's say, the computer voice that was already in there. But it's actually pretty new. And I'll be adding more voiceovers later on when there's a little more budget and a little more time to do that. So the traits system, I've also added that. Well, that's actually, it's not really a system yet, but in order to have some extra complexity to the game, some extra...
was a prodigy child left on the doorsteps of the Kashan monastery where he was taught the learnings of Master Azimuth. He perfected the incarnations of Beelzebub, granting him great power over attacking spells.
So this is the computerized force, of course, still, which I'll be replacing later on with Greg's voice, of course, but not yet. And here in the traits here, you can see we already had those skills taken into account. Some of them are taken into account, other ones just need to be implemented in a later phase. But I've also added some extra traits here. None of those traits, by the way, is implemented right now. They are to be implemented later on. But I've added them here to be able to add them to the demo reel and to the, let's say, the trail I want to create, and to have more depth to the game. So Foresight, during battle, see 2 turns ahead. Premonition, before the battle starts, see enemy traits and spells. Once per combat, summon a sidekick. Once per combat, petrify all enemies. Once per combat, clear all bad states. Have 5 extra maximum health. The ability to have 3 innate cards on your deck. Teleportation between visited spots. Gain the ability to flee combat once per 10 combats. Once per combat, have the ability to double your damage. Gain the ability to go back 1 turn in time once per 10 combats. Gain the ability to buy a checkpoint in the shop. The ability to have only 16 cards on your deck. And the ability to see your draw pile, actually. So these are really 14 extra traits you'll be able to activate. And of course, depending on the hero, you'll have some standard traits already at your disposal. But you'll be able to unlock them in the game, of course, too. So I've just added the interface to be able to show it in a trailer, for example. But that's to be implemented in a later phase. So let me also show you what I did in terms of artifacts. I've added another artifact called the sickle artifact. You start the battle with 2 thorns when you have the sickle artifact. So the artifact type here is thorns. And let's see, I've done that in a function called next turn, of course. Let's search for it. Next turn. And we see if we check if if there is an artifact with artifact type thorns, which this one is, the sickle is, and it's the first turn, then we set the player state thorns to that artifact value. That's basically it. It's a very simple thing to do, and a nice addition, I think, to the game. And I've added a sickle setting here. We can see here it's in the artifacts being used right now. And then you'll see that when the game starts, here we have it. We have the sickle, and we have two thorns to start. So basically that's it. I hope you liked it. As always, please like, please subscribe, and if you want a full project for this game, make sure to support me on my Patreon page. The links are in the description. Bye bye.